All right. Welcome to the Catalyst Way, where we have conversations around unleashing the power of purpose and meaning to fuel transformative change in yourself and for others. We've just hit episode 10, so we're now at double figures. And today we decided it might be good to talk about the book that Ivor and I published together, called The Catalyst Way, No Sir Find. A Guide to Unlocking Your Divine Potential. So that's the book. You can find it on Amazon, both in hard copy, in hardcover, paperback, and now Kindle. So we thought we would use this episode to talk about the book. So I wanted to start off saying, so first things first, Ivor had a desire to write a book more than I did. Because people have been asking me to write a book for years. And I'm just kind of like, I don't need one. But you have always had a deep desire to publish a book.
Yes,
So what was the desire and why this one?
I think as time went on, the desire for this book grew greater because it was my way of being able to address an issue, what I thought was an issue, a really sizable problem, and have a way to address what could be done to solve that problem. And which essentially centers around what you and I have been discussing for quite a while, which is people living without purpose and meaning, and why that just doesn't work, and we need to do something about it.
So we've talked about, the initial is Ivor kept talking about, I got to write a book, I got to write a book, I got to write a book. And I'm like, I don't. And then it shifted in December when we did these different workshops. And then I wrote the manifesto. So the Catalyst Way Manifesto, the title of the manifesto is, you know, the Catalyst Way Manifesto, Unleashing the Power of Purpose and Meaning to Fuel Transformative Change in Yourself and in Others. So that's the manifesto I wrote, ended up being like 30 pages. And what I wanted to do was send this manifesto out to colleges and universities saying, here's a way we could help students think about, actually, faculty, staff, and students think about education in a different way. And I was like tickled that I had this, and this was going to be quote unquote my book. And then Ivor came to me and said, what would happen if you could take this manifesto and add a religious biblical perspective to it? And I'm like, I don't know. So that was the project. So that was probably February, maybe January,
Right.
February. I think it was like February. And so, we changed a couple of things. So, it's not a manifesto, but, we had the Catalyst Way and added biblical perspective, Bible scriptures. We even had a couple of Bible stories. We changed Catalyst Champions to Catalyst Disciples because that's the focus you wanted to have. And we've put, and we had, the purpose crisis. We added, not only was there a purpose crisis in higher education and in the workplace, but also with church and student athletes, because those are the two areas. So we started compiling all this data, and then it's like, okay, what do we do with it? And I gave it to you, and I left it on you. So where did it go from there?
Where it went from there was the challenge became this needs to be something that's put together in a way that others can read it. We can get it to them to help them understand this is how this problem can be tackled. So, church isn't really doing what it needs to do to help people with purpose and meaning. It's supposed to, but it's not. we both agree on the fact that on the academic side, it's not what universities are doing either. So why would you not do that? You see thousands of students every year. If the goal is to make sure that you get them to a better place in life, why aren't we doing that?
Well, they assume that getting a college degree is the way to get to a better life, which we know is not the case, especially now with less job growth. I mean, there aren't any jobs out there. And with AI advancing as fast as it is, the jobs that, a lot of the white collar jobs that people would expect to get can be done by AI now, or it's going to be done by AI. So, you know, college is not fulfilling what it needs to do, which I would argue is helping students go through a personal transformation journey versus an academic success journey, which is another episode that we're going to do. But I just did a
Yes.
presentation on that. And for me, um, you know, we chuckle because Ivor would say, church is broken, and I would say, well, college is broken. And the question is, how do we fix it? So I think the book literally addresses how to get, I almost want to say how to, help with the spiritual growth for
Yes.
people. That's what the book does, which means we also have to create one for how to fix college.
And I think going back to your point, how do we fix it? I would surmise that it needs to start at the top, right?
When you say at the
Leadership plays
top,
a
oh, leadership.
leadership plays a very important role in that, and I would say that's where you have to go with it. Now, whether or not it's going to be accepted by leadership, well, that remains to be seen. Because especially if you talk about church as an institution, I'm not going to say you can't be successful from the bottom up, meaning working your way there through each individual member. But I would say the far more meaningful approach would be if it was coming from leadership, accepting this overall idea that what we've been doing so far isn't working. It's old, it's archaic, it's the way we've been doing it for years. And church, as church has been set up, has always been the same. We meet on Sunday, we sit for a couple of hours, if that long, and we hear a couple songs, listen to a sermon, we get up and we leave. And the same way we came in is the same way that we leave. However, the mindset is showing up week after week and continuing that same process should somehow get me to a better life, should get me closer to God, and should get me a spot in heaven. To which I say, absolutely not.
So, and and college is the same way. So you get the college degree, but not everybody gets a college degree. So what do you do for them? It's all this stuff. But one of the things we were talking about right before we started the call was this thing called metrics.
Mm-hmm.
And it was interesting to talk about how college is measured in terms of metrics and how churches are measured by their metrics. So touch on what a church's metrics are, which helps them disconnect from the transformation journey.
Well, you're definitely viewed as being successful if you have a large membership base, or at least a membership base that is growing. Your monetary value, the money that you are collecting, the tithing, the giving, your contributions to the local community around you, uh, all of that centers on your church being what's viewed as successful. That's the metrics. However, none of that speaks to what you need to have happen to allow an individual to grow spiritually. So the assumption is that, well, if you're going to this church and the numbers are growing and more people are coming, then it's got to be a good church, right? Well, let's define good. Right. So who says that that makes it a good church other than there are a lot of people who like to go there, but oftentimes their reason is because it's the programming. There's just something that entices you from an entertainment standpoint. You like the way the praise team sounds. You like the way the pastor sounds. There's just something that catches your fancy more than it being what's really happening to deepen my faith. And that challenge typically isn't being issued, which to my point earlier is why you're essentially the same person. But I could argue, like you said, what goes on in university. I go through 4 years. Yes, I get my degree, but I'm walking out essentially the same person who now has a piece of paper because nothing's been done to challenge me as an individual.
Right. And the book helps in that process, or it's actually one step in that process. So imagine, we've been doing these workshops. So imagine, the book touches on some of the means that we help people connect with the spiritual side. Um, but when we do our workshops, not only do you get to do it for yourself, but you do it in working with other people. And that's the value. But the book is a great start. So if you don't know anything about the Catalyst Way and don't know about connecting with the spiritual side, great place to start.
Absolutely.
Um, so I'm going to ask you an interesting question. How do you feel about the book now that it's done? Because now it's been out for about a month. So how do you feel about it?
A combination of emotions, that relieved that now it's done. Yes, excited. The feedback that we've received so far has been great, and it's also interesting to start thinking about what's next, right? And where can we go with it, along with what needs to be done now to get this message out to even more people. Now that we do have this first step in the process sort of laid out that allows people to at least take a picture of where they are now and then see how they can move forward again from a spiritual standpoint, which I think is the most important part because the inner journey is where it has to start. It starts at the level of your soul.
Yep. So that's how I look at it. This is the starting point. So most people are like, I write a book, I'm done. No, this has
No.
been, ever since we created the book, it's like, well, we've got to do one for educators. Hey,
Hmm.
maybe do one for pastors. How do we, you think, what about athletes?
Right.
Think about all these different populations that we're intimately tied to. And it's like, how do we take what we've done with this book and now take it to another level? And I just did a workshop last week at one of the local community colleges, and all I could do is think about, the academic success journey versus the personal transformation journey. And I would argue, how can you can have a college journey, an academic success journey without personal transformation. But I don't think, let me, what I'm trying to say is if you have a college academic success journey without personal transformation, there's something missing. But if you can have a personal transformation journey, it enhances the academic success journey. And
But you've got a system that's telling you otherwise.
that's right. But the system is saying focus on the academic success journey. Don't
Right.
focus on the personal
Right.
transformation journey. And that's a problem. Because like
Yes.
you said, you leave and there's no substance behind what you got. Uh,
Right.
but same thing with church. You leave church,
Yes.
you go to church for 20 years, there's still nothing behind it. So if you do anything, read the damn book. I mean, it
Yes.
starts you on the process. But at some point we're going to talk about these workshops that we do. So imagine taking what's in the book and actually engaging it in person or online, but we love to do the in-person ones because there's something about doing it with other people that enhances the experience. So,
Everything is tied to your story and being able to tell that and share that with others because I do believe that it is very possible to have a church journey without having any personal spiritual transformation. And I've watched people do that for years. And believing that it will happen just because you attend every Sunday is not how it works. But again, it's church is an institution. And this is what I'm saying is wrong and needs to be fixed. I I don't know why, but there's an attitude that says you can be a Christian and that's all you need to be. And that's the church journey because being a Christian is not the same as being a follower of Christ, because that's where the spiritual transformation personal journey takes place. And those two are not the same. But yeah, that's another conversation for another day.
mhm. But the book at least provides a guideline to go in a path that's moving in that direction.
Yes.
So any final thoughts about, oh, and for me, this book, it's, I think for me, just being able to work with you on it has been the biggest joy to see it come together for both of us. But my wife took a picture of the cover and sent it to like all our family. Say, look what Bill just did. He just created this thing. So people are just like, oh, I'm going to share it with this friend and this friend and this friend. So it's fun to see the excitement around it and around from our tribe saying, this is wonderful. The Life Design Cows community people saying this has been wonderful. Congratulations, you guys. Um, so now I'm like, all right, it's time to take it to another level. So that's the next journey. And I imagine that journey will come through as we do more of these episodes. Because it's it's exponential now. Because now we have the
Yes.
foundation. It's like now, all right, let's ramp it up. And that gets me excited. So especially as we think about the December workshop, which will be, coming up in 4 months.
Right.
So cool. So, any last thought, one final thought before we call it a day?
I'm very glad that we made the decision to do this and that now it's finally complete and looking forward to how this continues to unfold.
Yep. Same here. Couldn't say it any better. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll chat with
All
you
right.
the next time.
Bye for now.
Bye.